Now understand, when you have one guy run, how many Senate races do we have across the country? About 20, is it 23? Do we have 23 races? You have two now Republican candidates for Senate that have exposed, let me put it this way. I don't think the sentiments that Todd Akin or Richard Mourdock espoused in their public proclamations is really terribly unique in the Republican Party. I think that is the mainstream Republican thought, as bizarre as it sounds to us. The only thing that is happening now is that this Frankenstein that the Republican Party has created, that these people who just wanted to get tax breaks and use the electoral power of these fundamentalists, the only problem with this Frankenstein now is that it's no longer, listening to its master. It's just walking through the village. And Dr. Frankenstein is asleep in the house or is yelling, please, monster, don't do this. And they're just not listening. Because they don't know any better. Like, oh, we're supposed to be dog whistling. We're not supposed to be espousing this in public. Think Richard Mourdock says this after Todd Akin comes out with his illegitimate rape stuff or whatever the insanity he's espousing. This is after. He does not think what he is saying is in any way out of bounds, inappropriate, incorrect. Let's play This is Richard Mourdock in a debate, a televised debate in Indiana.
And I too certainly stand for life. I know there are some who disagree, and I respect their point of view, but I believe that life begins at conception. The only exception I have to have an abortion is in that case of the life of the mother.
Now, this in and of itself is a completely extreme position. Just this notion that every other abortion that is chosen by women in this country, and now we're talking about, several million a year, is, in this guy's opinion, murder. These women should go to jail for murder. The doctors should go to jail for murder. I imagine they have different degrees in his crazy-ass mind. Like the doctor will be charged with first-degree murder, and the woman, because of course she's hysterical, would only get manslaughter or something. Who knows? So he's espousing an extremely extreme position. It's a lot of women to put into our prisons. Of course, there's a lot of money to be made in those private prisons. They'll be, presumably, these women won't be able to commit murder again in this way because they'll be separated from men. And so maybe it'll be a nicer prison, which, of course, more cash. But whatever. Let's leave that aside. Continue.
I struggled with it myself for a long time, but I came to realize life is that gift from God. And I think even when life begins in that horrible situation of rape, that it is something that God intended to happen.
So he realizes that life is a gift from God. Forget about natural resources and, I don't know if this guy's a vegan or what, but just life is a gift from God. And if a woman is raped and and becomes pregnant because of that rape, it is God's intent. It is God's intent. Can you imagine if he said, well, I know some of our military personnel are killed by our enemies, but some of their wives go on to have children with other people who may be more fertile. That's just God's intent. Or perhaps it was just God's intent that 3,000 people died in a terror attack. No, of course, he would have had to have resigned his nomination immediately after that. Now, is he saying it's God's intent that women be raped? No, I don't think he's saying that. What he's simply saying is that, rape is just one of those things that happens on the way to God's intent. Which, of course, he would never say about anything else. He would never say this. And what it is basically like, look, a woman's sovereignty over her own body is limited to that part which is not her sexual organs. That's God's. So God has intent for that sexual organ that may not be aligned with the woman's, but that's okay. That's just the way God operates. So we must honor God's intent that that woman be pregnant and disregard everything that happens up to that moment until that pregnancy, until that conception. Because that's subsidiary to God's intent. Is there any analogy that this guy would ever make in terms of what is God's intent if a man had been, beaten with a baseball bat or shot in the face? Of course not. This is revealing of a fundamental perception of women as ultimately just vessels for God's intent. They have no other value, no other rights. Nothing transcends that intent of God's, that they be vessels. So when people talk about a war on women, no, there is no tanks. But there is an army, God's army. And that is to make sure that women understand one fundamental fact. You can complain about your not equal pay. You can complain about these other things. But the one indisputable fact that a guy like Richard Mourdock, and frankly, a large, non-marginal part of the Republican Party believes is that ultimately women have one important, non-transcendable purpose. That is to be a vessel. And anything else is secondary. Anything else is secondary. Of course, I don't know why Richard Mourdock has this exception for the life of a woman. Somewhere between, if the woman's going to die, then she can have an abortion. But if she's just going to be raped, meh. If she's just going to have to carry the child of someone who raped her, no. Sorry. This is the message here. This has got nothing to do, ultimately, with his moral perspective on abortion. It has to do with his moral perspective on what rights of sovereignty women have over their own body. Never mind whether or not they have the right to choose. They don't even have a right to dispute the fact that they don't want to be impregnated by a violent rapist or a rapist who happens to be their father or their uncle. Now, women don't have those rights. It's just astonishing. And the idea that this guy is going to come out and apologize and, people are twisting my words. What else could he be saying mean? Zero. Absolutely zero.